Ladies and gentlemen, very good of you to join us this morning because this is the panel that you have to be at. These guys have got years of industry experience. They are at the top of their game. And if you want a view from the top, of course, we had that amazing, beautiful party last night with that amazing view. These guys are going to give you a fantastic view from the top of the TV industry. My name is Kasia Madeira, as Justin so beautifully said. I am a BBC World News anchor, reporter, correspondent. I do pretty much everything at the BBC. I have worked there for 20 years, and I do not need to tell you guys just how much the television industry is changing. It is nuts how quickly it is developing. It means that my job changes very, very much. The demands from me are very, very different to what I used to do back in the day. One thing is always constant, and that is the viewer. For me, the audience is the most important, and the trust, the relationship that BBC News has with the audience. I always think of that one person watching. We have a lot more people watching. BBC World News, 139 million viewers worldwide. The BBC News brand, close to 500 million people that we target. And I take that very, very seriously. And I'll be discussing that tomorrow, actually, at the same time this morning. So do join me for that panel. But today, we're talking about the TV industry, changing nature. We have a fantastic panel. We have Christophe Limar, Executive Vice President of Video Services and Regional Vice President of Eastern and Central Europe at Eutelsat. Eutelsat, of course, one of the world's leading satellite operators. Also joining us is Tonko Wiseman, the new Executive Vice President of RTL Croatia, and lots of breaking news with RTL Croatia because they've just been bought up by CME Media Enterprises. So we're going to be talking about that as well. This is a really good opportunity to get an insight into how these kind of transactions take place. Also joining us, Hans Troelstra, who is the CEO of M7 Group, part of Canal Plus. I'm not going to tell you what M7 does. We're going to show you.
Whoa! Pas mal, non? Pas mal.
You were excellent.
You too.
Now, before we played this, we were having a discussion about that. And Hans, you said that I'm going to like that video. You were not wrong. Talk to me about the importance of when you put something together like this. It's the content that drives it, or is it? What's your thinking when it comes to N7?
Well, we're on this massive transition. We used to be just a distributor of channels through a satellite platform, and we realized it's going to be either adapt or die. So we decided to adapt so far. And so we're now building with the group that we are part of, and thanks to the acquisition of SPI, who are right down there, we are now building the capability to create our own content offer, to create our own channels, but also SVOD offer. And I do believe that going forward, this is critical. You got to have your own identity. You got to have your own content bit, apart from your role as an aggregator or something along those lines. But you have to develop your own content capabilities, and that's what we're doing, and that's what you saw.
And that's what we saw, and it's certainly impressive. And a couple of, the faces that we saw up there, it's the big names. I guess when it comes to, you talk about purchases there, and Tonko, your organization, RTL Croatia, is going through huge changes right now. So breaking news in terms of the acquisition by CME
Yes.
Enterprises Media. It's massively disruptive for your organization. Is it worth it?
I think it's absolutely worth it. Yes, it is. It's just fresh off. Like literally 72 hours ago, we completed the transaction. So
breaking news, guys.
Yeah. So we have now switched from RTL Group family to CME Group of family. I think the disruption is actually, it's constant in our industry. So it's absolutely always worth it because basically, as Hans just said, you constantly need to adapt. The essence stays the same. That is the creation of content. So we are still there to produce and basically create the best possible entertainment and also best possible information for the public. What is changing is how and this is the transformation path, that it's basically switching from the traditional models to new models. And this is, I think, where I'm hoping, anyways, it's going to be a perfect match with the CME family, especially working with some of the business units, primarily Slovenia, where I think we can jointly really continue on this path, of coming from a position where you have this syntagm like TV is dead. It's not dead. It's actually really much alive. TV viewing time is still there. People want to watch quality content, but it is shifting more and more towards the digital side, the on-demand services. And this is where we are basically now starting this new chapter with our company. And this is the disruption which is lying ahead for us. And again, not inventing the wheel. This is basically happening worldwide. But I think the time for Croatia is now basically ripe for such a shift.
So it's that shift that I guess then, Christoph, for you is fascinating because we're talking about digitalization, that kind of shift away from your core business. What does that mean for your company? And what are your concerns then when it comes to going forward? I know we can't prophesize even 2 years down the line, but just in the immediate future, what does that mean for you?
Excellent question. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Yes, I had a short media training before we started.
Did you?
Yes.
Not by the BBC. I'm just making that very clear.
Indeed, for us as a satellite operator, obviously the business models of our customers, because the broadcasters are our customers, it's mainly their business models which are changing, which obviously have a direct impact on our business model as well. However, first of all, I hope that Hans, obviously, thanks he's still alive with this company, because he said live or die.
We'll pay the bill. We'll pay the bill.
The Canal Plus is still a very important customer. I think what is the important point is that we look at it a bit more regionalized, because we cannot say as a general statement linear television is slowly but surely dying. If you look at the trends over the last 12 months, quite the opposite has happened. We have an increase of a couple of minutes. It's a couple of minutes, but it's not a trend where we see decrease. Globally, if we look at regional differences, obviously in the US we see decrease, strong decrease. If we compare the last 3 or 4 years, where the average linear viewing time was more than 5 hours in the US, now it's like 3.5. We can clearly see the impact in the States. Western Europe as well. On the other hand, you have regions like the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, where we still have strong growth. So I think we shouldn't generalize it across, but on a regional perspective, yes, there's pressure. But what we see more and more is joint opportunities. Before we look at threats, we should also look at it from an opportunity perspective, because there's always ways of building joint business models. 2-3 years ago, the traditional OTT operators, the Netflixes, Amazons, wouldn't have talked with us. Now, because they're moving also into new space for them, which is live sport events, which pushes them to the border of technology on their side, we are more and more engaged and working on joint corporations where Amazon or DAZN or all these players that move into live sport or live events where you have a high number of consumption concentrated, and you have challenges with the network situation. Cooperation between satellite operators and these players are becoming more and more obvious.
But live events, Hans, in terms of what you do, are they important? Are they still relevant? Is it still that kind of water cooler moment where people all gather together? Does that drive you? Is that part of your plan?
No, it's a big driver. It's also, when it comes to sports rights and everything, it's a very risky driver. But we did get the EPL rights for our brand in Czechoslovakia, Skylink. So in the next season, we'll be launching the EPL channels there. Of course, we could have never done that if we were not part of this group, because we pull in the resources from Poland, who've done this many, many times, pull in the resource from France, so we get the latest and greatest technologies and capabilities of producing this. And you do see that just having these rights is probably the easiest way to get large volume of new customers. The only problem is they expire after like 3 or 6 years, and then you either have to renew and pay too much money, or there will be some madman who takes the rights, and you're back to square one. So it's a very attractive option to pick. NENT did so in the Netherlands with the Formula One rights. They got a large amount of customers, but they also get all the troubles that come with it. So now there's a lot of backlog backlash, because you get too many subscribers on your platform, you get technical issues, you have people changing commentators, people don't like this. So it's, there's pros and cons. If you want to get a lot of customers fast, it's probably the only way to go. And I totally agree with Christoph. When we do so in Czech and Slovakia, we will really lean on what we try to do anyway, on cooperations with other telcos to get your distribution in order.
So, rights, it's those kind of, oh, sorry, Christoph, but just those big events that are big live events that are pushing you. Christoph, you want to just add to that?
Yeah, it's exactly adding to this point. Thinking about the broadcast and also what drives broadcasters is at the end of the day revenue, right? I mean, but just to quote an executive of a Salzburg-based company that does a lot of things, including Formula One, TV channels, and bubbly drinks, they told me a couple of months ago that when they think about return on investment, nothing beats the first ad slot linear on a live event sports, like a Formula One race. Hence, they're even shifting budgets again from digital into traditional linear business, because they have seen that over the last couple of years, a lot of things have happened, disrupting and new business models. But the first slot on a linear live event is still unbeatable for them.
So it's that kind of Super Bowl moment.
Exactly,
It still works.
Yes.
So that's interesting because, Tonko, we were talking about things that we feel are dead, normal TV, perhaps the way people consume is dead. But actually, you made a very interesting point, specifically for this region.
Yeah, no, it's not dead at all.
It's not dead.
When it comes to what Christoph and Hans were saying with regards to sports rights, it is getting more difficult as more players are entering now. Now, a couple of years ago, you would not think you would have OTT services fighting for sports rights, exclusive ones. So in that sense, where you need to still lock in your audience. In the sports section, obviously, it's getting more and more difficult. You really need to rely on cooperations because otherwise sports rights are going through the roof. So, but yeah, having a sports event live will bring in masses of audience. It's questionable whether it's actually worth it. Short run, yes. Long run, questionable. But in a right business model, it should still work. What then remains is, again, the major entertainment shows and ultimately the news. I mean, this is still a key driver for a traditional free-to-air, television, where people, although we are still, hooked on whatever various online platforms, if you want to hear the news, you will go to a trustworthy source, and this will normally be your TV station. So these are the last, I'd say, bastions of free-to-air. These are the things which are still bringing in all the viewing minutes. Day to day.
It's good to, from my industry point of view and from personal reasons, it's good to know that news is still relevant. It's just always awful that it's always such bad news. But so free to air, pay TV then, Hans, how does that then translate for you? Is news such an essential Does it drive what you decide to do for M7 Group?
Well, news is very big, but it's not something we're really, when it comes to our own content, we're really on entertainment. So
Yeah.
it's neutral, it's, well, politically neutral. Of course, you have to be a little provocative. That's what Canal Plus has always been. And everybody knows that this brand was built on provocative items, violence, sex, anything that... anything works, anything goes as well.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I can assure you it does. Yeah. And I was the one, and I know Bill knows, but I'm the one pushing for a remake of Emmanuel. As soon as they bought us, I said, the one thing we're going to do is we're going to do Emmanuel again, but then in today's world. Yeah. But I still didn't get there. I'm still pushing today. No, but news is huge in terms of audiences. And I think if you had news and you had the audience, you could use it to then bounce people, promote people into your entertainment blocks. But we're all about entertainment. So we would not be quickly diving into news outside of France. Of course, in France, we do that, yeah.
Exactly. So there's
and it gets into discussions on that as well. As you know, on C8, there's all sorts of debates on what kind of news and is it neutral or not, and yeah.
So it's everybody's different perspective. But Tonko, just for you as well, is it entertainment driven? Is that the direction?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, like I said, it's always the content which will drive the audience. So you need to constantly produce new innovative formats, right? I mean, you always have your flagships, right, which will bring in your steady audiences. But you can always you need to whiff out like what's next, and absolutely. So entertainment, but not all entertainment is actually suited for all platforms or obviously times. So guilty pleasure shows. People will never. You don't want to see it too much in the media, but people will come to I saw that Naked Attraction or whatever. Like it's a really good show. So absolutely, we're banking a lot on entertainment, and absolutely more so. Again, speaking of this shift, which should ultimately, bring us to the next stage of television. It's the shift to the VOD. So basically, production of exclusive VOD content is something which we see as a definite avenue we will pursue. Because this is which will be built obviously on the stable free-to-air, especially in our region. So this is very stable, but this comes in as a layer on top, where we think the mass audiences will actually follow.
And so I guess it's all about, with VOD, the technology that also drives it. So then, Christoph, for you, in your field specifically, what are the directions of travel in terms of technological developments? I mean, I know, smartphones, et cetera, have totally revolutionized what we do on a day-to-day basis. But can you give us an insight into where you're thinking the next future progression is going to be?
On a satellite perspective, there are different areas that we are currently looking at. I mean, here we have a broadcast show, and therefore I'm not talking too much about what is going on in the satellite space at the moment, because it's unfortunately not really broadcast related. The big focus is more on the what we call LEO constellations, which means low orbit satellite connectivity. These are the areas where Amazon, where my friend Elon Musk is playing. If you would have told me 2 years ago that these guys are heavily entering satellite space, I would have said never, ever. But they're there. They're there big time to get a piece of the cake. On the broadcast side, what we try and what we are working on is together with our customers to enhance the value proposition for the consumer. It's quite important, and we are working on different layers. One hand, which is important, we are trying to combine the classical dish, the satellite world, the DVB-S as we call it, with DVB-IP, so the IP standard and the satellite standard, to make sure that we're going to be able with satellite also to address IP format, which is very important, because that would take away one huge hurdle that we're currently having as satellite, because with IP standard we could address also all mobile devices. Very important topic. Then in areas where we have a lot of free-to-air, like the Middle East region, where we have more than 1,000 free-to-air channels, where we have 150 different type of set-top boxes. They all have their own EPG. The consumer gets completely lost where to find channels. So we're trying to harmonize the EPG world in the Middle East. And last but not least, a very important topic is what we call the data analytical play. A lot of our free-to-air broadcasters still are facing challenges to find out real viewership, because unlike in a place like Croatia or the Western world, where you have panels that measure per second who is viewing what, this doesn't exist in a lot of parts of the world still. If you want to have audience data, Africa, Middle East, you're completely lost. These guys are still doing their audience research based on telephone, paper, pencil, 2 days before.
Wow.
So here we are working on solutions together with ecosystem partners to, for the first time, provide real-time audience measurement, which would obviously revolutionize the world for the broadcasters and now hopefully also for us. So these are the big topics that we are working on.
That's a fascinating insight. It's always audiences and what they're doing. We're being watched all the time, aren't we, Hans? In terms of, Christoph mentioned Elon Musk, somebody who is always visionary and looking forward and looking for the next big thing. For you, in your position, what is that next big thing? And is there something that you wish existed but doesn't yet? Let's look into your crystal ball. You've got to have one. You're not going to be a CEO without one, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. Oops.
I'm always right. What can I say?
No, what I was thinking about is that we move now into the world of producing our own as well. So not just buying, but producing our own, which is yet another capability that we didn't have. Some of it comes from the group, and we adapt that. But we've also now hired our own staff who are looking into our own productions, who are here as well. And I think for us, that is the next thing, and that's a capability I would really like to have and develop. Because in the end, if you know who you are and who you want to be, in terms of the content that you want to produce and disseminate, then it's much easier to make your own. And we're not going to make everything our own, clearly, but making our own is the next dream. Because you can tailor make it to who you believe the audience is and what the audience wants to see, and be a lot more specific. And in the end, there always has to be some local element in the content to be really addictive. And of course, being in the territories where we are, if you make it your own, you can also bring in that local element, as we did with the series Planet Singly. This is the first one we produced, and it was then shot partly in Prague, in Amsterdam, and in Vienna, which of course for our audiences is recognizable. You'll see Dutch actors in it, you'll see Czech actors in it, and this will make it much more sellable. So I guess making our own is part of that ambition. Yeah.
So making your own and personalizing it, Tonko, let's bring you into on this then. Given that you've just now merged with CME Media Enterprises, so a larger distribution platform, more countries, does that unpersonalize then Croatia RTL, or will you also focus in on that kind of?
No, I think, local content is still going to be the one. I mean, there will be obviously, synergy effects, but ultimately, each market, each country has its own specifics. So I'm confident that we can produce something which will be interesting to people in let's say, the Czech or Slovenia and vice versa. But ultimately, we still target first and foremost our own little country here.
And I wonder, as a content provider, producer, some tips and some headaches that you can share with Hans specifically, but also with us as well, because it's a different world. It's a completely different world. The headaches are different, the rights issues, all the rest of it, but just having that creativity is a challenge. We're all after ideas, ultimately.
That's the one. You don't have, I don't know any country, if someone does, let us know, that has a massive pool of talent and massive pool of fantastic screenwriters, and they can just come and give you a ready-made fantastic product. So this is one struggle we have here, and I'm sure it's in most countries. You really you want to really bubble up. You want to expand on the productions. You want to have more and more content, but it's not that easy to create such a great thing. So in terms of headaches, it's not a headache. It's actually something which kind of challenge, which we want to see how we can overcome. But this is, again, becoming part of the CME group. I think we'll be on the right track, because this is exactly where we can pool talents, right? So you actually can find someone from Slovakia or Slovenia, which can come to you with a good story, which you can adapt and then prepare for the Croatian market. Not saying that the Croatian market is bad. Actually, I'm looking forward to the producers panel later on to see what they're going to say about this.
It's the difference between corporate world and journalists. I call it a headache. He turns it into a challenge. Very subtle, but that's a really, really nicely done. But Hans, I guess you're very excited with the content that we saw from the exceptional video there.
Thank you.
Are there sort of decisions that you thought, oh God, that didn't work, I wish we hadn't, and without naming and shaming, but just things as you progress along your career, etc. Any kind of decision that you just thought, why did I do that?
Well, there's many.
Right, okay, we've got 20 minutes. Let's go.
Yeah, not many I want to elaborate on here, I think. But maybe give me time to think. And one step back to content production, as I have the liberty to say whatever the hell I like anyway, right?
I did say that, guilty.
We do use the capabilities of the group. So in this case, Studio Canal, to help us with the development, because it is a nightmare, something we're completely not experienced in, other than the people that we now surrounded ourselves.
It's not a nightmare, it's a challenge.
It's a challenge, and it is a big challenge indeed. And I think that what I saw as an outsider, the biggest challenge is to take something that is creative, which by definition, of course, is not productive. It's just creative, and to then try to crank up volume is almost it's impossible, because that's not the way this system works. So I think the way we do it now is to just expand the scope of it. So you don't push one project faster, you just do many more at the same time, and then this is how we try to increase productivity a bit.
So is it when one project hits and that's a winner, then you take that further, or are you spreading your net thin but wide?
No, it's spreading it wide. Yeah, so starting up creating an infrastructure in which you can handle many more of these projects, in different territories, have them all bubble up, and of course not all of them get started green lit, and some of them never do, but you increase the scale of things, and then of course your output will produce as well. Yeah.
So you touch upon the kind of, what hits in which region. Christoph, you've got just immense experience globally in terms of your connections with the Americas, the Middle East, the African continent, Asia, of course, here, Europe. How does it work? Are there particular areas that something works and something doesn't? And people, of course, they do business differently around the world. And in your jet-set lifestyle, share a little bit of that. It can't all just be wine bars and rooftop
I think
parties.
it is. I think that's all it is.
I know. We know it is with Christoph, but no, do...
No. Obviously, yes. I mean, there are differences. Across the world, even within regions. And I made once the example when we launched a DTH platform with a customer based in Tanzania, and we created some marketing material where we used, and normally I go very much into cultural differences, but that was also new for me. On the image, the people that were on the brochure were from Kenya. And also, these are neighboring countries. It would mean the similarities in terms of what type of content they like, even families across border. But I have been told by the marketing agency that you cannot put a Kenyan person to market a project or a product in Tanzania. It goes that far.
Wow.
So we have to pay attention, obviously, to these cultural differences, not even continent by continent, but also within a continent. And different customers have different needs. So that's something we closely follow. In terms of technology also, because some of the regions simply don't have access to all the technologies we have here in Europe. If you want to launch, let's say today you have the vision to launch a OTT platform in Africa, good luck. Simply because the infrastructure is not there yet, and probably will never be there, and the terrestrial reach is very limited, and the price points of data are just too high for the average consumer. So obviously there are regions that skew towards different technology because simply of the choice they have. So yes, regional differences across continents are a daily part of my work.
a daily part of your work, and it's just such a nuance. It is fascinating insight, actually, to think that two neighbouring countries, it makes such a huge difference, which I guess, Tonko, you'll be monitoring, because now that RTL Croatia is now in this bigger platform, you spoke about the importance of still being unique and niche to Croatia itself. But I guess from your point of view, in this new role, what are you hoping for, and what are you just, I guess, concerned about as well? And you're going to turn it into a challenge and an opportunity, but I'm going to call it, what are there concerns that you're anxious about?
Actually, yeah, I'll switch it around. I don't see any concerns. I mean, it's
I'm going to get you.
It's just work, like you just, you go for it. I mean, I wouldn't be here, right? None of us would be here if we were just worried about, what's going to happen. It is a challenge. It is exactly like you want to have this, take this on and basically see if you can do the best, what we set out to do.
But is this where you personally wanted to be? Is this something that you've always dreamed of? I just want to be in this position, executive vice president,
yes,
amazing title,
so.
Very nice business card.
Yes, I was around like age of 7. I came to my parents and I was like, one day. No, it's quite the opposite. I'm personally, I don't consider myself to be a driven or ambitious person at all. Committed, maybe I would call myself committed to what I do. So, no, I didn't see myself ending up here. But I guess, with good team, with people really supporting you and basically creating a good culture within the company, I think, all things, good things can happen. So, yeah, no.
No concerns, commitment. I love this. I'm learning so much personally from a corporate world. It's amazing how it is. I guess that's why I'm not a CEO. Hans, you are a CEO. How do you?
I don't know.
No, that's not how you answer a question. Come on. No, were you at the age of 7 running around sort of thinking, I've got this drive and energy? How do you become a CEO?
I guess my nickname when I was 7, maybe not 7, but 12, was Boss. So they always called me
Okay,
Boss.
boss baby, guys. Here
And
we go.
my mother, as to this day, is still joking about that. Yeah. But other than that, no, there was no deliberate plan or anything. No. I think a lot of it has to do with luck. Of course, you have to be committed, and I am. This is all I do. This is what I like doing. And I think it's also about doing if you start doing something that you really don't like, you're never going to be successful at it anyway. So you just got to pick something that you really like and then become really good at it. And if it's being a cook or a sailor or an actor, it doesn't really matter. And the unfortunate part of our job is that you get to be the boss indeed. So yeah, I don't know. I just like doing it. I like to tell people what to do.
I've been told. So what is being good at? Than being a CEO of a company like this? Is it having the vision and?
Sure, yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's looking ahead maybe, because most of the people that you work with are really busy with, the production. Like even with this production, there's guys that constantly concentrate on making sure everything goes okay. So nobody else is taking the time to look out the window. And as a joke, I always, when I hear people come by my office, I stand up, I just look out the window just to piss them off, basically. I say, no, I'm thinking about the vision of the future. This is what I need to do. But it, of course, it's a joke. And I think it is our task to look a little bit ahead. And if I regret anything, then if you go back to our private equity days, I've always pushed for, in the early days at least, for another private equity sell. Because, of course, financially is very beneficial for the management that's there. But private equity inherently is very short-term focused. It was 2 years. It was all about making cash. It was all about just deleveraging, leveraging, dividends. I mean, it's all financial. It had nothing to do with the future of the firm. And that just took us many, many years in which we could have been transforming, that we are now finally doing. So had I started, say, 4 years ago, I would have been a lot further. So had we been sold to Canal Plus 4 years ago, or any other group that is interested in the far future of the firm, we would have been much better off. So in hindsight, that's maybe one that we should have done earlier. Yeah.
And it still meant that, just think in terms of the control that you then have by become embraced by a larger company. Are there any kind of, again, concerns? I don't want to be negative. Challenges that you then lose certain abilities, certain, not rights, but certain...
Well, you have to adapt. You have to become a proper corporate citizen. So I'm learning. You have to speak French. And, and SPI is just joining us. So I'm also trying to tell them, and failing, of course, but I'm trying to tell them how to be successful within such a beast is very different from being successful as an entrepreneur within the world in general, because you have to apply your skills to influence the people around you in the Canal Plus, and to use the resources that they have available. But we could have never bought the EPL rights in Sky if it wasn't for them. There's a guy that sits in Paris that does nothing but these bloody auctions. I'd never done one of these. I don't know all the forms you need to fill out. All we need to say is, I would like to bid, but not more than this price. And he goes in and he gets it. And then he says, there you go.
So it's having people that, not necessarily smarter, but you understand that there are people that just do it better than you, specialize in that. Yeah. And so, Christoph, for you as well, because you've got just the most fabulous executive vice president, video services, regional vice president. The titles matter, they're important. And I guess, is that something that, you know, how do you get to be two? An executive vice president and a vice president. I mean, how does that work?
First, I don't think that titles matter, quite frankly. Where it matters sometimes, depending.
If I got it wrong, it would matter.
It depends sometimes on business discussions, depending with whom you talk. Unfortunately, in the corporate world, titles do matter. There are people in regions of the world, like the Middle East. If you don't have the right title on your card, they wouldn't even talk to you because they consider you as not on the right level. So for some business discussions, you have to have a certain title in order to progress the discussions. How do I come to two titles? I have been asked last year in May to interim support the region, the ECE region. That's why I'm here today. Because the colleague before left the company, and it was meant to be 2 months. Now, 14 months later, I'm still here. Well, at the end, the story tells that they probably like the job that I'm doing here as well, and that's why I have the two jobs at the moment. But I think at the end of the day, what is important are not titles. What is important is that you like what you do, that you have a certain ambition. I started I'm an investment banker. So don't ask me how I ended up with Satellite. That's also a story we can talk the last 6 minutes about. But I started as an investment banker. 20 years ago, I moved into Satellite. I'm still there. I love what I do. Passion, and really like what you do every day. But also consider the downsides. I mean, there's not just as you said, the rooftop parties. There's a lot of flying, jet lag, family that sits alone at home. I have 5 children. Sometimes I don't see them for 3 or 4 weeks.
How did you get 5 children?
I have just 5. I'm working on it. Okay. No, but at the end,
so
that's a mix.
Who's looking after the children then? How does that work?
My wife and some helpers that we have at home.
Yes. It was about how did you get 5? I deliberately asked how did you get 5?
I did not specifically, honestly. I'm sure you've got a video for that as well. But that's the cost, isn't it? And I guess that's something that you know, your 2 titles or this position that you don't necessarily see. But you mentioned you were an investment banker before. That takes a drive and a certain energy, and I guess that makes you progress into this area seamlessly, or was it a massive turning?
No, it wasn't a massive change. At the end of the day, it was triggered by investment banking, and then I ended up working for
you have to love it. I think.
You have to love it.
Otherwise, you know, I mean, I'm a lawyer by trade, and you know, basically don't hate me. So and you know, when I fell in love with the industry within weeks. You know what I mean? Like, because it was just a different. You know, where you can end up being a corporate lawyer, you know, being in a banking industry, no offense. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like every day the same. This was just a wild ride since day one, you know, like, I actually distinctly remember the moment when I said, you know, we just closed the negotiations on one of the Hollywood majors. I think it was DreamWorks. So it was like grueling negotiations, you know, multi-million deal. So super difficult. And we finally closed the deal. And then the next contract I had to do is the purchase of a Vietnamese potbelly pig for Big Brother. And I was like, where else, in one day would I have this? So it was like, this is where the love comes, right? So, and yeah. You have to do it. And then the transition is seamless. I mean, that's exactly it. You have to love what you do.
You've got to, it's the bonkers world of the media, and it is, I don't want to use the word crazy because that's, again, negative connotations, but it is just very creative and diverse. So we've got a banker, a lawyer. Hans, what were you?
I don't know. By education, I'm very little. I just finished. I just finished an MBA. So I'm a business person, I guess. Yeah, finished an MBA. Yeah.
An MBA.
And I've always worked in business for Philips, always in marketing and operations kind of jobs. Philips, Liberty, UPC, Liberty, and this. Yeah, and a lot with private equity. Yeah.
But I guess just you could have worked in business in any capacity, as a steelworks, whatever, mining industry, anything else. Why this industry?
Well, I was actually in anything. So I was in domestic appliances, so making food processors and vacuum cleaners. And we did shows, not like this, but we did shows also with people vacuum cleaning. It was basically, at the time, it was women vacuum cleaning.
That's the next panel, guys. We're going to have Hans hoovering. Hans hoovering. No,
that's what we did. And at some point, I realized this might not be the industry I will stay in for the rest of my life. And then when I did the MBA, I did it with Philips. And you were linked to a board member. And this guy was Pierre Everaert, a Belgian guy, who had just acquired all these cable companies, because he was on about Philips needing to get into entertainment and all this. So this is what got me started. And then within Philips, I was able to jump ship to a different division, and then I stayed in media. Yeah. It's just a lot more entertaining than domestic appliances. However exciting the vacuum cleaner was.
I don't know. I think you've got the actions. Just before we wrap up, and thank you so much for the personalised insights. In a sentence, Christoph, are you excited about the direction of this field? Because we've had many challenges, and there are always financial restraints. In a sentence, your thoughts going forward? Excitement, concern. What do you feel?
Definitely excitement, because. If you're staying too long in your comfort zone, it also bears a lot of risks. Today we are in an environment, a satellite operator, that is challenged by the traditional business model, that helps us think out of the box, that helps us create new partnerships, new ecosystems. And despite the fact that there is this connotation that the satellite industry is under heavy pressure and probably will slowly but surely fade out, I can guarantee you that's not the fact.
And Tonko, pot-bellied pigs aside, I can't even say it, pot-bellied pigs, it's a hard one. Your excitement, your enthusiasm going forward in a sentence?
Well, we are just at the beginning of a new chapter, right? So this will actually now really boost the entire operations, coming into the CME family. So we just want to ride this wave for as long as it's going to be. And it's, we welcome any disruptions. We want to quickly adapt, and we are agile, and we're just going to love this. So looking forward.
Catch the wave. And the wave, Hans, we started with your video. We're not going to end with a video. We're going to end with your final thought for the future.
Well, for us, it's really keep transforming. As I said, change or die. We change, and we really I like change. I like transforming, and we'll continue to do that. We do like to do it not on our own, but much like in Austria, we try to find a partner. That was A1 in this specific case, and we like to do that in other countries as well. And that's what we will do, and that's what I look forward to.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to my absolutely brilliant panel who have given us such insight. And who knew Christoph once a banker, Tonko once a lawyer, corporate lawyer, and Hans a vacuum salesman, vacuum cleaner salesman. Now, there's a book about that. He ended up being a bit of a spy, but we'll gloss over that. I would like to have a very big round of applause from my esteemed panel, The View from the Top. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.